Our group implemented Network Simplex to solve the minimum cost flow problem in a directed graph. That is, given a directed graph with specified parameters, our algorithm solves for an optimal solution that specifies the flows on a graph from source to sink that incur the minimum total cost. We built a program in OCaml that implements the Network Simplex algorithm on a graph G. This graph can be specified by the user or randomly generated by the program. Dating from the work of German physicist Gustav Kirchhoff, network flow has a variety of invaluable applications. For example, consider a network modeled by a map. The cities are nodes, and the roads between them are the edges. The minimum cost flow problem then solves for the optimal flow along the network if a certain amount of resources has to move through the graph. Additionally, the algorithm can be applied to a more abstract network, like the telecommunication networks that span the globe. The minimum cost flow problem requires a directed graph with a designated source and sink. There is a fixed flow that must traverse the graph from source to sink. Additionally, each edge has a specified cost for each unit of data flow that passes through that edge, and a flow capacity, representing the upper bound of flow that may pass through that edge. Given these parameters, the minimum cost flow problem then solves for the optimal flow on each edge, such that all of the constraints are met. The Network Simplex algorithm is based on the Simplex method from solving linear programming problems. According to Network Flows, the textbook we consulted for most of our research, the Simplex algorithm is, quote, perhaps the most powerful algorithm ever devised for solving constrained optimization problems, end quote. This method is known as the Network Simplex algorithm because spanning trees correspond to the so-called basic feasible solutions of linear programming, and the movement from one spanning tree solution to another corresponds to the so-called pivot operation of Simplex. We can adapt and streamline the method to exploit the structure of the minimum cost flow problem. Thinking back to our example graph from earlier, we were able to write a CSV reader for our algorithm. We wrote our example graph into a CSV so that the so that the computer can read it. CSV. Note that all the information from the original graph is preserved in this CSV. Now we can run Simplex on our sample graph. Our algorithm is able to return extremely detailed information about each pivot and this optimal solution. Just spot checking right now, the edge that goes from 1 to 2 should have a flow of 6, and the edge that goes from 1 to 3 should have a flow of 3. Note that we are only concerned about edges of type tree. And checking our solution graph right now, we see that the edge that goes from 1 to 2 does indeed have a flow of 6, and the edge that goes from 1 to 3 does indeed have a flow of 3. Furthermore, because spot checking can become quite tedious, we outputted code that visualizes our solution graph, and we can paste this into a graph visualizer. Here, we have our source and we have our sink. The green edges correspond to edges marked tree, which are the edges we're concerned about, while the purple and yellow ones are not contained in the solution. The width of the edge is proportional to the flow on the edge. So here we have, this is a flow of 6, which is bigger than the flow of 3 right there. Furthermore, we can generate a random graph and compute Simplex on this graph from the command line that involves running Simplex with an integer, for example, Simplex 10. Given this random graph, we then run Network Simplex on the graph and give the output. Note that because we have visualizer data, we could plug this into the website and see what the graph itself looked like afterwards, and as well as the initial graph with the code given here.